But yeah, is that right? Right in Shorewood or right there? Yeah, so yeah, so I can put a word in.
One of the great things about Rennicke is its central location in our community. And, when the lights are on in that field, you can see it from a couple miles away, and there's a baseball game going on in town.
There's a real cultural attachment to baseball in the Mequon area. I think the location of Rennicke Field has something to do with that. So many kids grow up and they go to the pool there, or they go to the library, they go to the playground, so they've always kind of looked over at the field.
It's a really cool field in terms of its parameters. It's not standard. It's 264 feet to right field, which is crazy short. And then you have this, railroad tracks behind it, and you have trains going back and forth during games.
They're right. My dad probably known for, at least now known for his baseball, but he was the assistant principal at Homestead. So I had to be a good kid. Yeah. So I would say dad was an educator more than anything. I mean, he just, like when he passed away, he was a assistant principal at 3 different schools, at South Milwaukee, and then at Brown Deer, and then he came to Homestead. And what was neat about his funeral was students from all 3 schools came, and again, stories about my dad. Dad was old school. He was, tough but fair and cared. And everybody knew he cared about what was best for students. So it was named after my father the year after he retired. So 1979 was when they named it. And it was, what was nice was it was the parents of the players that got it through. So again, as a coach, sometimes, things don't go well. Well, that was a real honor for my dad because it was the parents of the players, former players, that he had. So they obviously had a good experience, and they're the ones who got the name changed.
And so my wife and I went over, and the Rennickes were all at their house to celebrate Thanksgiving. And Dawn couldn't see very well by that point in time. He was almost blind. And I brought in a couple Homestead hats, and I got to sit with him and share that I was getting inducted in the Hall of Fame. Because after my second year of coaching at Rennicke, he used to run Brewers Keeps all summer. And he called me and asked if I would come coach for him in the summertime. And I said, sure. So I did. And I remember he introduced me, I think it was 95. He introduced me and said, this guy is going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. And so it was pretty special for my wife and I to be there. And kids like to wear the flat brim caps now. And Don hated flat brim caps, and I don't like them either. So when he and I took the picture, he couldn't see the hat, but he wanted to make sure it wasn't flat brimmed. I promised him it was curled, which it was, and we got to take some pictures and things.
Back when we played, first of all, we played night games, so true night games. In fact, we started at 8 o'clock, which, wow. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Crazy. But we did. And so lights, and by that time, people were off of work. So we get 500 to 600 people a night to our games. Wow. It was fantastic. And they'd ring, the bleachers were all filled, or they ring the sides where the pools. And there was a water fountain bubbler back by the pool, so us as players would have to walk through the crowd to get a drink. And, the community was a part of it. As I look back at that field, 3 generations of Rennickes have played on that field. So my dad and his brothers played. Me and my brothers played on there. Then their kids played. And my son played on that field. My son and my daughter both lived at Spur 16, and part of the reason they went there was they wanted to look over Grandpa's field, which was pretty cool.
Coached 880 some varsity baseball games, and over half of them were right there. You know, from 1993 to 2018 for 26 years, and I got to share a lot of time with my brother for 2 years there. I got the opportunity this year coming back to get to coach my nephew on that field, and it was not lost upon me the last game that we played there. That was probably the last time I would coach at that field. It was cool. So
City council voted to remove it completely, right? That did happen. Yeah. There was conversation about whether or not what happened. It definitely happened, and so now Homestead needs to find a new home for baseball. We don't have one after next spring. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a I would call it a local landmark, right? And it's a place where they've been playing a lot of baseball for some time.
this time it became really evident to me that it was going to happen, whether I lit myself on fire and rolled around on the ground or wrote the newspapers. So I thought it was pragmatic for people to start looking at a field somewhere else. I don't like it. I'd be lying if I said I was happy about it. The city has never really considered Rennicke Field to be a priority in all the years that I've been involved with it. It was there. All right, people can play baseball on it. The city did cut the grass and apply weed control, but that was about all that was ever done to it. When it was time, we didn't have really a warning track for a long time. They didn't have a warning track. And we said, we need, it's a pretty short park. It's a high school park. We need a warning track so kids can feel the change from grass to gravel. And the city said, the leadership said, well, we're not going to do that. We'll give you some gravel if you want. So myself and the Homestead baseball program at the time, this was probably 1996 or 1997, we put the warning track in. We raised $135,000 privately to do the work at Rennicke Field, to put in new lights and to have some extra drain tile and stuff added and to change the backstop a little bit.
This could be $20 million, this whole thing, which we don't have, and that's almost impossible to fundraise, right? That's just so much money. Right now, they're looking at the possibility of dropping a field in right here. Does that make sense? Just one baseball field, because we clearly need baseball. That's a lot of money. The district doesn't have that money. You'd have to fundraise it, or you'd have to go to referendum. As an administrator, as a principal whose job is to, ensure that everybody has access to the sports that they want to play and that we're safe and able to be supervised in those things, you'd want all of our things on campus. And from my lens, as I said before, being on campus is certainly the best possible thing. And then having it be turfed, whether it's the whole thing being turfed, or just an infield being turfed, I mean, that would be essential.
Matt Joyne has a great idea of, once his whole thing is bring Rennicke Field home, which is bring it home back to home, which, we as a family support wholeheartedly. If we can't have Rennicke Field at City Hall, then we'd love to have it at Homestead, where my dad spent a good portion of his career and loved being, he loved the students there.
Nobody knows who Don Rennicke is. You do now because you're interested in the history of the field. So the way that you do that is you pass down stories from generation to generation. When the field's built and it bears his name, there needs to be something somewhere that talks about who he was. It has to be deliberate. It's gonna fade unless you're deliberate about it.
I don't have to look back and go, like, oh gosh, there's a bad memory. No, I have nothing but great memories of that field. And so did my brothers, and so did my dad.